So I bought Iman Ghadzi's course, more about that later. And part of that course, they offer you $40 membership. I believe it was 40, it might be $45 for their software, AgencyFlow. And I'm going to quickly run through AgencyFlow, what my thoughts of it are, whether or not I'm going to continue using it, and what I recommend. Long story short, I've stopped using it and I recommend other things, and here's why. For those of you who don't know, AgencyFlow is supposed to be a crossover of a few other softwares such as Asana for project management and task tracking, Slack for internal and external team communications, as well as a bit of Trello functionality in there for creating boards, and then a bit of invoicing in there as well. Now, when you combine all those things, it does sound like a great package, right? If you could have all of the functionality that Asana has, that Slack has, that Trello has, and also something such as Xero has, and combine it into one, that would be awesome, right? And I believe that's kind of what AgencyFlow pitches themselves as, but after having using it, I found it really wasn't like that. It had little aspects of each one of those other platforms, so like aspects of Asana, aspects of Slack, but you're actually really having to compromise on some of the core functionalities that those other apps have to actually use AgencyFlow and have all that software in one bundle, which I found to be a bit of a pain in the ass. Before I go any further though, just a little bit about me. My name is Gavin. I run an email marketing agency based out of New Zealand called in-box or inbox.co.nz. We specialize in email and SMS marketing. The reason I make these videos is really because I want to have something to look back on when I'm going back over my journey in the next 5 years, just to see where I was, what I was learning, what I was talking about, and also to provide some value to some other people, and to also garner a little bit of a following to help build my agency down the line. So if you or you know somebody who needs email or SMS marketing services, shoot us a message. We'd love to get in touch and help you. Now, my thoughts about AgencyFlow. One of the big selling points that these guys really try and push is that AgencyFlow has the ability to connect with your clients, so you can have clients use AgencyFlow and have internal communication channels with them, similar to Slack. But one of the big things they also say is that you can actually assign your clients tasks, very similar to an Asana. And they say it really helps with communication, allows your clients to get oversight, and really puts them above the competition. But the reality is, you can do this with Slack and Asana. You can actually integrate Asana and Slack in together for cheaper than what AgencyFlow offers, and get way more granularity with the offering that you can kind of dig into, just in terms of the oversights that Asana gives you with the projects, how you can track your tasks. It's just a lot more robust. Now, the thing with this software is, for it to be as useful as they claim it to be, your client has to be willing to use it because they believe it's going to be more useful for them than what they're already using. And the reality is, some of the clients that I've worked with, I've found that they also have other providers. For example, one of my clients has an SEO service provider, a AdWords service provider, and then me, an email marketer. And the other two service providers are using Slack. So for them, it makes a lot more sense to keep using Slack instead of switching over to another platform, even if it might be a little bit easier, because then they're actually using two different platforms to communicate. For them, it's so much easier to just say, hey, Gavin, listen, your platform may be easier, but I've already bought into Slack. I'm already using Slack, and it's just so much easier if I keep all my communication on one platform. Can we just keep using Slack? And to be honest, the added benefits, which I don't think there are many when it comes to AgencyFlow, really doesn't outweigh me having to move away from Slack. It's just so much easier for me to be like, hey, you know what? Let's just stick with Slack. Let's just do that. Also, Slack's cheaper. It's cheaper than AgencyFlow, and I'll talk more about that a bit later. The reality is, you're trying to get your client to use a new platform, which it takes time. It also splits comms into two different platforms, like I just mentioned, and your clients more often than not are busy. Odds are your clients are hiring you for one of two reasons. They're either hiring you to make them more money or to save them time, or a combination of both. And if you're actually creating a lot more friction in the ability to deliver your service, such as asking them to relearn a new software, and I know AgencyFlow says it is easy to learn, but the client's not really going to realize that. They're going to be like, oh, holy shit, I got to jump into a new platform here. Here we go. It's going to create friction that's unnecessary, and you really don't want to be wasting their time or having them to spend more time, especially in the onboarding phase. Iman Ghadzi even talks about that in his course. The onboarding phase is so important, and you want to make this as seamless and as painless as possible. And the best way to do that is to use platforms that your clients are already used to, such as Slack. Now, secondly, Agenciflow really does kind of pitch itself as a compromise to Asana, right? They don't say it explicitly, but that's kind of what their task tracking software seems to allude to. Agenciflow is pretty restricted in terms of what it can do when it comes to task tracking. The ways you can view data and projects in Asana is really second to none. I mean, you can get beautiful charts to display, you can see your timelines, your deliverables, all that stuff in a really seamless and beautiful way that makes it really easy for you to understand, and potentially, if you want to share with your client, easy for your client to understand. Agenciflow really doesn't have that functionality. On top of that, with Asana, you can actually integrate it with a lot of third-party platforms. One of the things that I'm looking at doing is integrating Harvest, which is a time tracker. It's very similar to Toggle for those of you who use Toggle, and you can integrate Asana with Harvest to actually track how long your team members are working on specific tasks. This helps both for paying your staff as well as helping you manage where certain projects are taking longer than they should be. For example, if you find that one project took 2 hours more than it should, you can then look at that project, break it down within Harvest, just to look at what specific tasks actually caused that blowout. That's a whole nother video in itself. The key point here is that really Agenciflow doesn't offer that, and they don't offer third-party integrations, which I don't think they're currently capable of doing just because of how small they are, and I really don't know how capable they're going to be going down the road. The fact of the matter is, Asana has such a bigger team behind it and probably has a load more funding that they can afford to invest in the infrastructure of the platform in a way that Agenciflow can't, and can just offer a lot more functionality that Agenciflow never will be able to. So there's quite a few things just lacking in terms of functionality. Also, just to touch on the invoicing, yeah, invoicing is useful when it comes to the Agenciflow software, but the reality is they're really just using Stripe to facilitate the payment processes, and Stripe has its own fees on there. So you're probably just better off, if that's the deal breaker for you, getting an invoicing platform, you're much better off just using some other third-party invoicing platform such as Flow or Xero. Xero is great if you have access to it. Definitely look at using that because you can also get a high-level view of your forecasting, your budgeting. I find that super, super useful and something that I really need to double down on myself. Full transparency, I actually haven't dived too much into Xero, but I've heard a lot of good things, and it's something I'm going to be exploring this year. Now, the pricing. So I've just got my data points just here. Agenciflow, for those who are not part of Iman Ghadzi's course, costs $95 per month. So it's not cheap. And if you were to go for Asana Pro, and I'm just comparing things here, if you were to go for Asana Pro, that would cost you roughly $10 a month. And then Slack Pro would cost you $7.25 a month. And then some invoicing platforms such as Wave, which is free. You're actually coming out at saving a lot of money and getting way more bang for your buck if you just buy these other platforms separately rather than using Agenciflow. On top of that, things like Slack and Asana have real potential to grow with your business. I found that Agenciflow, just looking at it, I feel like it would get very complex, very quick, and just a bit clunky the more clients you started bringing on board. With Slack and Asana, I really don't see that being a problem. It can grow according to how big you really need it to be. And Agenciflow just doesn't really have that functionality. So my final conclusion is that if you're looking at Agenciflow, I recommend steering away from it. You're going to get a lot more bang for your buck using a combination of other platforms, like I said, Slack, Asana, some sort of invoicing platform, and then Trello, which is free as well, just for managing your lead funnels. That's what I use at the moment. It works really, really well for me. It's cheaper than Agenciflow. It's a lot less clunky. Clients don't really get nervous when I'm telling them about, hey, can you join my Slack channel? They know what that is. All the work's been done. It's real easy. Awesome, guys. That's the end of my video. Any questions, please shoot me a message. Otherwise, just subscribe for updates. It really helps the channel, and I want to keep doing these videos. And the bigger the audience, as vain as it sounds, the more encouraged I am to make these videos. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.